Welcome to Eating Smart for Your Heart, Part 4 of our 6-part series on dining for cardiovascular health. Today we'll go over Heart Smart grocery shopping, reading food labels for heart health, and a little bit on navigating the grocery aisles. When it comes to healthier grocery shopping, it's all about becoming a confident shopper. This can help you ease meal-related stress and help you become more efficient. This is going to help your heart-healthy habits stick over time. Some grocery myths that I often hear as a dietitian is that healthy eating and cooking takes way too much time, or that it's always more expensive to eat healthier. A common one is that you should only shop the perimeter to stick to those healthy foods, and that we must shop very often to eat well. We hope that today's presentation helps to dispel some of these myths and gives you some strategies to cut down your time and your budget, to give you items that you can buy in the center aisles that are budget and pantry friendly, and often cut down on your number of trips required to get to the store. When we look at food labels, we want to understand all of the information that's listed. A great place to start is the serving size. If we don't know how much the numbers are kind of a frame of reference for, the numbers don't mean too much. So always start with the serving size and understand what amount of this food are we talking. Then check the calories. We already know that calories and quality both matter, right? We want to stay within that calorie window, but choosing quality foods is perhaps even more important. Still, the calories help frame how much energy we're getting that food, whether it's from carbs, protein, fat, or alcohol. Then we want to check in on the healthy and not so healthy nutrients that we might want to increase or limit. In the yellow section here, we want to limit these nutrients. We've got saturated fat and trans fat and sodium. We've covered these extensively in the previous classes, and we want to really make sure you're able to frame them as it applies to your diet. When it comes to total fat, companies are not required to list the unsaturated fats that are in their food product, and you can do a little math to figure it out. See, in this example, the total fat is 12 grams, while saturated and trans fat are 3 grams each for a total of 6 grams. We can then assume that the 6 unlisted grams are unsaturated fats. So this will go for if the total fat is 8, saturated fat is 1, and trans fat is 0, we can assume that 7 grams of fat are unsaturated. You can also check the ingredients list to see what kind of fats and oils are used in that product. When it comes to sodium, it's probably best to not focus on this purple section, the percent daily value. This is based on a 2,000 calorie diet with a recommendation of 2,300 milligrams of sodium. Most often when we're looking at a heart healthy diet and cardiac rehab, we're looking at a sodium goal closer to 1,500, maybe max of 2,000 milligrams per day. So your personal goal might be lower. So the percent daily value is not going to be accurate. So look at the numbers. Anything that is, listed over 20% of that daily value for the day is considered high, but that might be even higher than 20% of what you need for the day. When it comes to dietary fiber, we really want more fiber in the diet, up to 25 grams at least per day. So your fiber is going to be listed on the food label. Also under the carbohydrates, we're going to see sugar. And then you also see some vitamins, minerals, more of these micronutrients listed below that. There has been an update to the food label. It happened in 2020. Companies are still in kind of the transition phase, but you'll start to see this new label with larger print for serving size and calories. And that percent calories from fat is gone. We know that quality of fat matters most, and now the food label reflects that. You can also see the added sugars listed, and this is one of my favorite adjustments to the food label. Before, it would just say total sugars, 12. You did not know how many of those sugars were naturally occurring versus added. So now they have to list how many grams of the sugars were added or not what we call intrinsic to that food. It didn't start in the food like fruit or lactose from milk. It was added sugar. They've also changed the vitamins and minerals. Vitamins A and C are not required anymore because most Americans are not deficient in these, but we are seeing deficiencies of vitamin D and potassium. So these are now required. So we can check in on our vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium in every food that we eat. Beyond this, One of the biggest sections we like to check in on is the ingredients. I like to see whole foods in that ingredients, foods that I would keep in my own pantry instead of a very long list of, highly processed food and lots of, additives and preservatives. So check that ingredients list. It is listed by order of weight. So the heaviest items in that recipe are listed first and kind of go to the lighter items. When we're considering a heart-healthy food label, we want to focus on these 4 sections. The first is saturated and trans fats. These are fats we want to limit, but we also want to prioritize unsaturated fats, and this information helps us do that. So with our saturated fat, we want to aim for less than 7% of calories per day, which is about 8 to 15 grams of saturated fat or less for most people. We all want to aim for 0 grams of trans fat. It's a manufactured fat that promotes inflammation. There's not good research behind trans fat. Really try to avoid adding that to your diet. When it comes to that fat section, you can do some simple math to, kind of identify what amount of saturated or unsaturated fats there are by doing that math. So in this product here, 7 grams are unsaturated and 1 gram is saturated. So that helps you kind of frame the food and make the best decision. With the sodium, as a review, 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams per day is the goal. And we want to keep in mind that this might be one food, but what are we having it with? What are we adding to it? Do we have any salted condiments, spices, other high salt foods? It's the cumulative for the day, not necessarily just demonizing one food item. So keep in mind that it is the collective. We want to make sure overall we're reducing sodium in general. For dietary fiber, I want to aim for at least 25 to 30 grams of dietary fiber per day. Now, these are going to be found largely in plant-based foods. So your labels, you might see fiber listed on products with beans, legumes, whole grains, your whole wheat products. But foods that are high in fiber often don't have a food label, like fruits, vegetables, right? Or nuts that you buy in bulk, right? So keep in mind that some of your high fiber foods might not have a food label. That doesn't mean that the fiber is not there, but knowing that your plant-based foods are giving you fiber and that when you're looking at processed or packaged items, the label can help you decide. And then with sugars, we want to pay attention to added sugar versus naturally occurring sugar. When we consider added, we want no more than 24 to 36 grams of added sugar per day. And remember that 1 teaspoon is equal to 4 grams on the food label. So if you do have a little sugar in your tea or coffee and you do add 2 teaspoons, that's 8 grams of added sugar right there. So stay aware and stay intentional and let these numbers help you make these heart-wise decisions. As we navigate the grocery store, we can consider some different sections. Today we'll review produce, the bakery, meat and seafood, dry goods, dairy, and frozen foods. In the produce section, we want to choose a variety of types and colors. We're aiming for 5 or more cups of produce a day. And yes, that does sound like a lot, so look around the section and see how you can purchase items that are convenient, that don't need a lot of prep, balanced with items that you might need to get out a knife for. Some of my favorites are broccoli slaw, shredded carrots, the coleslaw mixes where you can do your own different dressing or vinaigrette on it, cherry tomatoes, sliced mushrooms, even green beans. I can prep those at home and not get out the knife at all. You can also look at foods and fruits that you can pre-wash or eat whole, and vegetables that you could pre-cut and have on hand, like peppers, celery, carrots, broccoli, and cauliflower. So think about how you can really assist yourself in having these foods at the ready at home. In the produce section, we often receive a lot of questions about organic versus non-organic. We do have a resource for you to kind of help you make that decision here, but it's important to know that the end user does not have a higher risk from pesticide exposure when we wash our produce well. So whether you're purchasing organic or not organic, we want you to first wash your produce really well. Some items might taste a little different or look a little different if they are organic. Some people prefer organic for environmental purposes. How you can identify, your conventional organic versus genetically modified items in the store is through their little code that's usually on a sticker on that produce item. If it's 4 digits, it's a conventional produce item. If it starts with a 9, it's organic. If it starts with an 8, it's a genetically modified item. So you can kind of choose your own, just not understand that the nutrient construct of that fruit or vegetable is shown to not be different from these three types of produce. You can also look around your store for seasonal and local options or visit a farmer's market or local farm. This can be more cost effective. Also make sure you check the scratch and dent cart. Sometimes they'll have, peppers that are just starting to wrinkle that you can take home and cook up and freeze. You can also look for those convenient items and those variable expiration dates. So bagged salads, pre-cut veggies and fruits, but also think about how you could buy fruits and vegetables that expire at different rates. So you might want to buy a zucchini, then some broccoli, then some Brussels sprouts, then some carrots, and use them in that order. Carrots and Brussels sprouts last a pretty long time in your fridge, but your zucchini is going to go, within 3 or 4 days. So keep in mind to be variable with your expiration dates and plan ahead so that your produce can kind of roll along with your schedule throughout the week. This is a great resource for choosing whether to buy organic or not. The Environmental Working Group is a great organization that looks at how many pesticides are found on our produce items. The Clean 15 is the 15 produce items that are most often shown to have the least number of pesticides. So you might not need to prioritize buying these organic. When it comes to the Dirty Dozen, these fruits and vegetables are shown to have the highest number of your pesticides. So your berries, your delicate fruits, your delicate greens, your items that grow close to the ground, right? If you're buying them conventional, again, just make sure you wash them well under running water with friction. You're not going to be at higher risk. But if you want to purchase any organic produce, this list is a great place to start. In the dairy section, we have milk, yogurt, cheese, butter, and margarine. A lot of times these whole fat, items might have that saturated fat present, so always check your label. When you're buying milk, you can look for fat-free or low-fat options. These are going to have less saturated fat. I think it's important to clarify that the differences between the milk, they don't have more or less vitamin D, vitamin A, magnesium, and usually protein, but they do have a different amount of fat. There are also some plant-based options for milk. Just check that label for added sugar. Many of even just the original brands are also sweetened. So if you're looking for unsweetened, it must say unsweetened. So explore the plant-based options. There's a lot out there like almond milk, rice milk, soy milk, and oat milk. There's plenty of options available. So check those labels and make the best choice for you. Yogurt, your best choice is going to be fat-free or low-fat or a plain Greek yogurt, and then flavor it yourself at home. Because we also want to limit or avoid the artificial sweeteners that we find in a lot of these foods. So I know that plain yogurt doesn't taste the greatest, but what if you added some cooked frozen berries where you cook them down, you add just a touch of honey, and then scoop those into your fruit as your own flavoring. You can also add vanilla extract, cinnamon. I love pumpkin puree and pecans and just a touch of maple syrup in my yogurt. It's kind of a fall take on it. So you can get creative. Always check your added sugars on the ingredients list and make the best choice for you. With cheese, we really want to watch the label for those saturated fat. Grams. Low-fat cheese can be lower in saturated fat, but it's often higher in sodium, and sometimes the texture is a little odd. So you want to watch the saturated fat, watch the sodium, and choose kind of your fresh natural cheese and limit the portion. 1 ounce is the portion, and we want to use it in moderation. So instead of focusing on cheese being, the whole snack, pair it with some nuts or seeds, a little bit of fruit, and a little bit of cheese. This is how we can achieve that balance, eat foods that we love, and not get too much saturated fat in the diet. With butter and margarine, again, it's all about portion size. You can look to buy, natural products. They all, are having some products that it's just cream, olive oil, and a little salt for a spreadable margarine that's not based on processed oils or hydrogenated oils. So check those labels, and as always, see where you can replace olive oil and avocado, these heart-healthy fats, for what you're used to most of the time with butter and margarine. With our breads in our bakery, we want to aim for breads that contain at least 3 grams of fiber per slice. Check the serving size some brands list it as 2 slices, some brands list as 1. So we want 3 grams of fiber per slice. Your first ingredient with your bread should be whole grain or whole grain wheat. That whole grain symbol, 100% means 100%, right? It's whole grains. It can be multigrain and not be whole grain. So really look at that label. The first ingredient should say the word whole. Sprouted bread can provide more nutrition, and this is due to just better nutrient absorption once that grain is sprouted, then made into a bread, and they're often lower in sodium. So sprouted whole wheat breads or whole grain breads can be a great source. An example of this is Ezekiel bread. You'll find that in the freezer or refrigerated section, but they do sell sprouted wheat breads in the dry goods as well. With our cereals, both cold and hot, again, it's all about checking the label. Cold cereal, we want to see at least 5 grams of fiber per serving. Hot cereal, at least 3 grams of fiber per serving. It's best to use just plain oats, or if you're having kind of like an oatmeal as a hot cereal. Any of those packets really might have added sodium and sugar, so always check the label with that. Overall, we want 8 grams of added sugar or less, and then you can change the nutrient density of your bowl of cereal as well by adding a little bit of fresh fruit, slivered almonds, and using, a milk that's a heart-healthy choice for you. And we can beware claims, of in your cereal, yogurt covered, real fruit. A lot of times these just mean that sugar has been added. So again, check the labels, check the ingredients, and make a nutrient-dense, high-fiber choice for your breakfast. In the meat and seafood department, portion size matter, and I want you to consider the cost per portion. Oftentimes Americans are really overdoing it on the portions of meat. They're much larger than what our bodies actually need. So making sure we balance our plate and have that proper portion of meat so that it leaves room for your beans and grains, your non-starchy vegetables, a little healthy fat, and a smaller cut of meat. When we're looking at meat and poultry, select or choice cuts are oftentimes leaner, and prime is going to mean the most fat. We want to choose items with the least visible amount of fat. So beef or veal like a top round or sirloin, loin chops or tenderloin, poultry that's skinless, or a lean ground poultry will all be a fairly decent choice. We still want to stick to that 2 to 3, sometimes 4 ounce portion based on what we learned last class with how much we really need. That leaves room on our plate. Right? It's not about restricting, but it's about balance. And if we pick a little bit of a smaller portion of protein, it leaves room for those other plant-based foods on our plate. For seafood, some great choices are salmon, whitefish, and tuna, and trout. And looking at frozen fish, that's a great option. We always want to check for sodium, and unbreaded is ideal. Anything that's frozen sometimes has sodium added to help with water retention. So again, check the label and make that most heart-healthy choice. When it comes to deli meats, we really want to limit or skip these. When we're looking at heart risk and inflammation, deli meats and processed meats are kind of the top of the line. So if you are shopping at the deli counter, do that where they're cutting a more natural choice versus the prepackaged and boxed items in the meat department. Aim for that 2 ounce portion having no more than 400 milligrams of sodium per serving. Ideally, we want to see nitrate and nitrate-free options. And again, we want to limit or skip these. So try replacing, your deli meats and your habit for, doing sandwiches with deli meat. Make a sandwich with leftover sliced chicken. You can do a vegetarian sandwich or wrap with hummus, or you can try flaked salmon or tuna as an option as well. So we can still enjoy these sandwiches and wraps, but make these swaps that are heart healthy. If you love deli meat, try to limit your portion and then really ramp up the plant-based additives, the veggies, even hummus and avocado, so that you get a well-rounded meal instead of having a sandwich with 5 ounces of your deli meats, forcing sodium to be higher than probably what we're after. In the frozen food department, if you are going for a frozen entree, your upper limit for this is going to be 600 milligrams of sodium or less, ideally. right? We want to see some fiber in those frozen entrees as well. As the market demand for convenient foods grows, there are new brands and new options out there all the time. So you definitely can take a look. That doesn't hurt. And with frozen options, or frozen entrees, it's always an option to add your own vegetables, salt-free beans, nuts, or lean proteins. So if I buy a frozen, stir fry that's low sodium, I can then also add extra frozen broccoli, maybe some unsalted cashews, and a little bit of diced chicken from my dinner the night before. I've ramped it up, I've added nutrition, I'm going to be more filled, but I didn't add a single gram of sodium. So think about how you can also use frozen vegetables where you're checking those ingredients. Look at, steering clear of added sauces or flavorings. Those usually come with sodium. And then with ice cream, we want to avoid those hydrogenated oils and these kind of fillers and high fructose corn syrup sweeteners. We all, can love a good ice cream treat once in a while, right? But trying to avoid these highly processed ingredients where possible. So your best bets in the frozen section are your whole grain waffles, your vegetables and fruits without added salt and sugar, riced vegetables, any kind of whole fruit bars that are sometimes frozen, your stir fry veggies, cooked whole grains and beans, Ezekiel bread, and then your whole food veggie burgers. So any kind of veggie burger, just flip that ingredients list over. We love to see when it's made from lentils or beans, mushrooms, maybe even carrots, onions, celery. We want to see whole foods as the ingredients for these veggie burgers as a meat replacement. In the dry goods aisle or those center aisles, a couple areas to kind of hone in on are your oils. We want to choose ones that are usually liquid at room temperature, and you can look on the label for a cold or expeller pressed message. This can have more benefits and be less of a refined oil, so they're going to have more of those antioxidant benefits. And with their canned and boxed foods, these are sometimes high in sodium or different preservatives or additives. So we want to choose, items that have the least amount of ingredients possible, and choose options without added sauce or flavor packets. If you want a rice or, a side dish that's flavored, it's so crucial to learn how to do this at home. We can do it easily with frozen diced onions. Add your brown rice and your water to, and cook it up, and then finish it off with a good set of spices that are salt free. It can still give us a lot of flavor without all that added sodium. And there are plenty of single ingredient items to be found in the canned and boxed food section. So your best bet for dry goods are going to be unsalted nuts and seeds, natural nut butters, salt-free vegetables and canned beans, your dried beans and legumes that you find in a bag, your high fiber and low sugar cereals, oats and whole grains like barley, farro, quinoa, and wild rice, and then no or low sodium broth and stock. And I'll add another one here, salt-free canned diced tomatoes are a great staple for the home. So some heart smart application tips for grocery shopping. First and foremost, read labels. Investigate one grocery store section at a time and choose the healthiest items. That way, the next time you see the yogurt section or the bean section or the canned veggie section, you know exactly what you're going for. You can also compare brands and varieties and become really familiar with ingredients lists and, really identifying, do I cook with these ingredients at home myself, or are these a bunch of preservatives that are more highly processed? And then find nutrient dense groceries. Get creative with single ingredient foods. How much can you really do with lentils? How much have you explored with that food? And that's right in the dry goods. It's cost effective and it's nutrient dense. And we want to ramp up the convenience items with whole foods. So maybe you do buy a low sodium frozen entree. How can you add to that? Maybe you do buy a salad kit. How can you add garbanzo beans, pecans, a cut apple? Really put these high fiber foods that are quick to add into these convenient items. And then maximize your pantry and your freezer. A really great kitchen system will have you only buying some fresh items weekly or maybe even every 10 days from the produce and the meat section, paired with the healthy foods you keep on hand, your dried grains, your canned beans, nuts and seeds, and your items in your freezer so that you can make these whole food meals in a very doable and approachable way. So again, don't ever hesitate with questions. Reach out to schedule an individual consult with our registered dietitian. It can be found at 616-885-5000.